Standing in my childhood bedroom staring at wedding photos that should have been mine, I felt my world collapse. The bride's face was identical to mine, but it wasn't me. It was my twin sister Claire wearing the dress I'd picked out, kissing the man I'd planned to marry. My name is Casey Wright and I'm 28 years old. 3 months ago I thought I had everything figured out. I was engaged to Kevin Murphy, the love of my life since college, and we were planning our dream wedding for December. I'd been working in Seattle for 2 years, building my marketing career while Kevin finished his residency back home in Atlanta. Long distance was hard, but we made it work with video calls and monthly visits. Surprise. Claire had said when I walked through our parents' front door for what I thought was a surprise birthday party. Instead, I found wedding decorations, guests I didn't recognize, and my sister in a white dress that looked suspiciously familiar. The room went silent as I stood there, travel bag still in hand, staring at the scene before me. My mother rushed over, her face pale as death. "Casey, honey, I thought you couldn't make it until next week." "Make it to what?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That's when Kevin turned around. The man I'd been planning to spend my life with looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. But the real shock was the gold band on his left ring finger and the way Claire's hand automatically moved to cover her own matching ring. "We need to talk," Kevin said, his voice shaky. But I was already backing toward the door, my mind reeling as pieces of a puzzle I didn't know existed began falling into place. I drove around Atlanta for 3 hours before I could even process what I'd witnessed. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from Kevin, Clare, and my parents, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I needed to think, to understand how my entire life had been turned upside down without me knowing. Finally, I parked at our old college hangout and answered Kevin's call. "Casey, please let me explain," his voice cracked through the speaker. "Explain what? That you married my sister? That everyone I love has been lying to me?" I couldn't keep the tremor out of my voice. "It's not what you think. Claire told me you changed your mind about us. She showed me texts where you said you'd met someone else in Seattle and didn't want to hurt me by telling me directly." His words felt like physical blows. I remembered those texts now. Claire had my phone for a week after I'd cracked the screen. She said she'd handle getting it fixed while I used my work phone. "Kevin, I never sent those texts. I would never." "She had screenshots, Casey. Your number, your contact photo, everything. And when she showed up saying you'd asked her to break up with me gently, to help me move on." His voice broke. "God, Casey, I was devastated. I loved you so much." Loved. The past tense hit me like a slap. Claire was there for me. She looked just like you, sounded like you when she comforted me. Felt like having a piece of you back. Things just happened. I closed my eyes, seeing the manipulation so clearly now. "When did you get married?" "Last month. It was small, just immediate family. Your parents thought you were too busy with work to come home for." He stopped abruptly. "For my own sister's wedding to my fiancé?" I finished bitterly. The silence stretched between us before he whispered, "I'm so sorry, Casey. I thought you didn't want me anymore." That night I sat in my childhood bedroom, now clearly Claire's domain, staring at evidence of her deceptions scattered across social media. She'd been posting about her relationship with Kevin for months, carefully cropping me out of old photos and reposting them as her own memories. The comments from friends and family made my stomach turn. "You two look so happy. Finally getting the love you deserve, Claire. Casey's loss, your gain." My mother knocked softly on the door. "Sweetie, can we talk?" "Did you know?" I asked without turning around. She sat heavily on the bed beside me. "Claire said you'd given Kevin permission to move on. He showed us the texts, Casey. She said you were embarrassed about changing your mind and asked her to help him through it. And you believed her? You've known us both our entire lives. You knew how much I loved Kevin. You'd been distant lately, barely calling, always too busy for visits. When Claire said you'd met someone at work." Mama's voice cracked. "We thought maybe you'd outgrown us, outgrown him. You know how she's always been jealous of your success." I finally looked at her. "So you let her steal my life?" She said you were happy for them, that you wanted to see Kevin with someone who'd prioritize him over career ambitions. Mama wiped her eyes. "I see now how wrong we were to believe her without talking to you first. Where is she now?" "Honeymoon in Belize. They used the resort reservations you and Kevin made." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. Not only had Claire stolen my fiancé, she'd stolen our exact wedding plans, down to the honeymoon destination we'd spent months researching together. I stood up, suddenly feeling very calm. I need to see those texts she showed everyone. Casey, what are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time everyone learned the truth about my dear sister. My best friend Natalie arrived within an hour of my call, armed with her laptop and a fury that matched my own. As a cybersecurity specialist, she'd always been the one I called when technology frustrated me. Tonight, her skills would serve a different purpose. Show me everything, she said, settling at my old desk. I handed over the phone records I'd pulled from my carrier's website, along with screenshots of the fake texts my family had been shown. Natalie's fingers flew across the keyboard, her expression growing darker by the minute. Casey, this is more sophisticated than I expected. She didn't just delete messages. She created entirely fake conversations using a spoofing app. Look. She turned the screen toward me. The evidence was damning. The fake texts weren't just sent to Kevin. Claire had created entire fabricated conversations with multiple people, painting me as someone who'd become selfish and dismissive of my family. She'd even sent fake messages to my college friends, claiming I'd said terrible things about them. There's more, Natalie said grimly. She's been intercepting your calls and messages for months. Anytime someone tried to reach you directly about the relationship problems she was reporting, she'd intercept and respond as you. I felt sick. How long? Based on the phone logs? At least 8 months. She's been systematically isolating you from everyone back home while building her case that you'd changed. What about Kevin's messages to me? I never stopped hearing from him until about 6 weeks ago. Natalie's face went pale. Casey, sit down. She pulled up another screen. She's been intercepting his messages too and sending responses as you. The last real conversation you two had was probably in January. The room spun around me. So when I thought we were talking about wedding plans, you were talking to Claire. She's been playing both sides for months, Casey. This isn't just identity theft. This is psychological warfare. I stared at months of fake conversations, seeing how carefully my sister had orchestrated every detail. She'd even used my writing style, incorporating inside jokes and references only I would know. We need to call the police, Natalie said firmly. But I shook my head, a cold fury settling in my chest. Not yet. First, I want to see how deep this goes. 3 days into my investigation, Claire began posting honeymoon photos from Belize. Each image felt like another knife to the heart. Not because I still wanted Kevin, but because of the casual cruelty behind every choice. She was wearing the same bikini I'd bought for the trip, staying in the exact bungalow Kevin and I had selected, even visiting the Mayan ruins we'd researched together. But it was the caption on her latest post that broke something inside me. Finally living my best life with my soulmate. Sometimes the universe has to take what's not meant for you to give you what is. Grateful for second chances and new beginnings. #blessed, #married life, #living my truth. Living her truth? I read aloud to Natalie, who was still camped out in my room, helping me document everything. She stole my entire truth. Look at the comments, Natalie said quietly. My college friends, my coworkers who'd known about Kevin, even distant relatives were congratulating her. But worse were the comments about me. Good for you, girl. Casey never deserved him anyway. I always knew she thought she was better than everyone. Finally, Kevin is with someone who appreciates him. My phone rang. Kevin's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment I considered not answering. But I needed to know what story she'd told him. Casey, please don't hang up. His voice was strained, background noise suggesting he was somewhere public. I keep thinking about what you said. About the texts you never sent. Are you having doubts about your new wife? I couldn't keep the sarcasm out of my voice. She's been acting strange since we got here. Different. She keeps making references to things we never did together, calling them our memories. And when I asked her about the early days of our relationship, her stories don't match what I remember. What do you remember, Kevin? I remember you, Casey. Even when I thought I was falling for Claire, I was really falling for my memories of you. The way she laughed like you, moved like you, even wore your perfume. He paused. I think I've made a terrible mistake. You think? I know. God, Casey, what have I done? Kevin called me from the hotel bathroom at 2 a.m. Belize time, his voice barely above a whisper. She's asleep, but Casey, I found something. She has 2 phones. My heart started racing. What's on the second phone? I don't know yet, but I saw her using it earlier when she thought I was showering. She was typing messages and laughing to herself. When I asked who she was texting, she got defensive and said it was work stuff. Kevin, you need to be careful. If she's willing to steal an identity and manipulate everyone we know, there's no telling what else she's capable of. I keep thinking about our relationship, trying to remember when things started feeling off. Casey, I don't think we ever broke up. I think she just replaced you. The pain in his voice was evident, but I couldn't let myself feel sorry for him. Not yet. What are you going to do? I need proof. Real proof of what she's done. Can you help me? Before I could answer, I heard a voice in the background. Baby? Who are you talking to? Just my residency supervisor, Kevin lied smoothly. Emergency at the hospital. This late? Come back to bed. Kevin whispered quickly, I'll call you tomorrow when I can get away, and hung up. I stared at my phone, mind racing. Part of me wanted to help him, but a larger part of me was furious that he was just now questioning things. Where was this skepticism months ago when his supposedly devoted fiancé suddenly became cold and distant? Natalie looked up from her laptop. You're not seriously considering helping him, are you? I'm considering getting justice. If that helps him understand what Claire did to both of us, fine. But I'm not doing this for him. Good. Because I just found something that's going to change everything. She turned her screen toward me. Remember how we couldn't figure out how she knew so much about your private conversations with Kevin? I nodded. She's been recording your phone calls for over a year. Everything you thought was private? She heard it all. The next morning, Natalie presented me with evidence that made my blood run cold. Using specialized software, she'd recovered fragments of audio files from cloud storage linked to Claire's secondary email account, an account she'd created using a variation of my name. Casey, you need to prepare yourself for what you're about to hear, Natalie warned as she queued up the first file. My own voice filled the room, intimate and loving, talking to Kevin about our future children, our dream house, my insecurities about long-distance relationships. These were private moments, sacred conversations between two people in love. But the worst part was hearing Claire's voice in the background of some recordings, clearly taking notes. On one file from 3 months ago, I could hear her whispering to herself. He wants 3 kids. Mortgage pre-approval by summer. Worried about Casey's commitment. Perfect. She wasn't just stealing your identity, Natalie said softly. She was studying you. Learning how to be you. The files were time-stamped and organized by topic. Wedding plans, future goals, intimate moments, Kevin's concerns, Casey's vulnerabilities. It was like looking at a blueprint for psychological manipulation. My phone buzzed with a text from Kevin. Can you call me in an hour? I'm going for a run alone. Don't answer, Natalie advised. You have enough evidence to press charges now. Let the police handle this. But I was beyond caring about legal channels. I'd spent 2 days watching my sister parade around social media in my life, reading comments from people who thought I was selfish and unworthy of love. My family still believed her lies, despite everything I'd shown them. I'm going to call him, I decided. But not to help him. I'm going to make sure he understands exactly what kind of person he married. Casey. She recorded my most private moments, Natalie. She stole my voice, my words, my dreams, and she used them to seduce my fiancé. I want him to know that every conversation he thought he had with me in those final months was actually with her. When Kevin called, I was ready. Did you get access to her second phone? Not yet, but I found something else. Casey, she has a notebook. Pages and pages of notes about you, about us, about things we did together years ago. Things I'd forgotten, but she had them all written down. Kevin, there's something you need to know about those memories. I told him about the recordings, about how she'd been listening to our private conversations for months. With each revelation, his breathing grew heavier. You mean when I thought I was confiding in her about missing you? She already knew everything you were going to say because she'd heard you say it to me first. The silence stretched between us before he whispered, What kind of person does something like this? The kind of person you married. Claire and Kevin returned from their honeymoon on a Tuesday. I knew because she immediately posted a photo of their cozy homecoming, featuring takeout from my favorite restaurant spread across what used to be my coffee table in the apartment Kevin and I had planned to share. But I was ready for her. I'd spent the week building an airtight case with Natalie's help. We had the phone records, the spoofing evidence, the recorded conversations, and testimonies from friends who'd been confused by the messages they'd received from me. My lawyer. Yes, I'd hired a lawyer. Confirmed that what Claire had done constituted identity theft, fraud, and possibly harassment charges. More importantly, I'd had Kevin secretly install recording software on his phone before their return. I needed Claire to confess, and I knew her arrogance would be her downfall. I didn't have to wait long. Kevin called me that evening, his voice tight with controlled anger. "She's bragging about it, Casey. She's actually bragging." I could hear Claire in the background, her voice slightly slurred with what sounded like celebration whine. "I mean, really, Kevin, it wasn't that hard. She always thought she was so much smarter than me, but she never even knew I could access her phone remotely. All those months she thought she was texting you? That was me, baby. I knew exactly how to keep you interested while making you think she was pulling away. You manipulated both of us," Kevin said, and I could tell he was deliberately prompting her to say more. "Please. I saved you from wasting your life on someone who didn't appreciate what she had. Casey was always going to choose her career over you. I chose you over everything. By lying to everyone we know? By giving us a chance we wouldn't have had otherwise. Don't be so dramatic, Kevin. We're happy now, aren't we? That's all that matters." The recording continued for another 20 minutes, with Claire detailing exactly how she'd orchestrated the entire scheme. She was proud of it, reveling in how clever she'd been. When Kevin hung up, I sat in my car outside their apartment building watching their silhouettes in the window. Tomorrow I would start phase 2 of my plan. Tonight I just wanted to say goodbye to the person I used to be. The trusting sister, the naive fiancé, the woman who believed family meant loyalty. That woman was gone forever. I scheduled a family meeting for Sunday dinner, telling my parents I had something important to discuss about my future. What they didn't know was that I'd invited several key witnesses. Kevin, who was still pretending everything was normal with Claire, my college roommate Destiny, whom Claire had sent fake messages to, and my old boss from my internship, who'd received a fabricated resignation email apparently from me. Claire arrived glowing, wearing a new wedding ring that was suspiciously similar to the one Kevin had originally chosen for me. She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. "So glad you're finally ready to meet Kevin officially as my husband." "Oh, I think we've met before," I replied calmly, setting my laptop on the dining room table. For the next hour, I systematically presented every piece of evidence Natalie and I had compiled. The fake texts, the spoofed conversations, the recorded private moments, the detailed notes about my life, and finally the recording from the night before where Claire confessed to everything. My mother's face went white when she heard Claire's voice admitting to the manipulation. "She recorded your private conversations? For over a year." Daddy stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Claire, is this true?" Claire had started crying halfway through the presentation, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage. "You had Kevin spy on me? You turned my own husband against me." "Your husband?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Kevin was never yours to begin with. You stole him through fraud and manipulation. I gave him what you couldn't, someone who actually prioritized him." "You gave him lies," Destiny interjected, her voice shaking with anger. "Casey, I'm so sorry. Those messages I thought came from you, where you said I was boring and basic. I couldn't believe you'd said that after 10 years of friendship." Kevin finally spoke up. "Claire, how could you do this? To your own sister? To me? Because she had everything." Claire screamed, all pretense finally dropping. "Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect fiancé. Everyone always loved Casey more, praised Casey more, expected more from Casey. For once I wanted to know what it felt like to be the chosen one." The room fell silent except for my father's heavy breathing. When he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. "Pack your things. Both of you. I want you out of my house tonight." "Daddy," Claire started. "No. What you did to your sister, to this family, is unforgivable. You're not welcome here anymore." Monday morning, I walked into the Atlanta Police Department with a folder thick with evidence and a determination that surprised even me. The detective assigned to my case, Detective Merrick, listened to my story with growing amazement. "Ma'am, in 20 years of law enforcement, I've never seen identity theft this sophisticated between family members," she said, reviewing the documentation. "This goes way beyond sibling rivalry." By Wednesday, Claire had been arrested on multiple charges: identity theft, fraud, harassment, and unauthorized access to electronic communications. The local news picked up the story because of its unusual nature. Twin sister steals identity to marry victim's fiancé, and suddenly my private nightmare became public. Kevin had moved back in with his parents, shell-shocked and devastated. He kept calling me, desperate to apologize and explain, but I wasn't ready to hear it. The man I'd loved had married another woman without even attempting to confirm the breakup with me directly. That level of trust, once broken, couldn't be easily repaired. The real satisfaction came from watching Claire's carefully constructed social media presence crumble. As news of her arrest spread, people began connecting the dots. Friends came forward with their own stories of suspicious messages they'd received from me over the past year. My cousin Tiffany called, crying, "Casey, I thought you'd become this cold, judgmental person. She sent me a message saying you thought I was making poor life choices and didn't want me at the wedding. I haven't talked to you in months because I thought you hated me." Similar calls came throughout the week. Claire hadn't just stolen my identity, she'd systematically destroyed my relationships, isolating me from everyone who might have questioned her version of events. But the most devastating revelation came from my elderly grandmother, who lived in a nursing home across town. "Baby girl," she said when I visited, "I kept asking your mama why you never came to see me anymore. That girl who looked like you came once, but something felt wrong. She didn't know about your grandfather's watch or the stories I used to tell you." Claire had even tried to manipulate my dying grandmother, and that's when I knew she truly was a stranger wearing my face. 2 weeks after Claire's arrest, Kevin stood in my parents' living room, the same room where I'd discovered his betrayal, holding a folder of legal documents. His appearance shocked me. The confident man I'd once planned to marry looked hollow, aged years in just weeks. "The marriage was never legal," he said without preamble, handing me the papers. "She used your social security number, your birth certificate, documents she'd stolen from your room. Legally, I married you, not her." I stared at the marriage certificate, seeing my name typed clearly in the bride's space despite Claire's signature. The irony was bitter. Even when stealing my identity, she'd somehow made herself legally invisible. "So what are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying we're technically married, Casey. Have been for 6 weeks. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing. "My lawyer says we can get it annulled based on fraud or what? Or we could talk, really talk, about what she did to both of us." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something other than anger. Not forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Kevin had been as much a victim of Claire's manipulation as I had been. "She showed me videos, Casey," he continued, his voice breaking. "Videos of you saying you'd outgrown me, that long distance was too hard, that you'd found someone who understood your ambitions better than I ever could. They looked real because they were real, just edited and taken out of context." I remembered those conversations now. Late-night video calls where I'd expressed my fears about our relationship, my worries about the distance, my insecurities about being worthy of his love. Claire had somehow recorded those vulnerable moments and weaponized them. "But you never called me directly," I said. "You never asked me to my face if I wanted to end things." "Because she showed me messages where you said you couldn't bear to hurt me in person, that you needed time to figure out how to let me down gently." He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I thought I was respecting your wishes by giving you space." The manipulation had been even more thorough than I'd realized. 3 months after Claire's arrest, I sat in my therapist's office struggling with a question I'd never expected to face. Could I forgive my sister? "Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay," Dr. Patel reminded me gently. "It means choosing not to let her actions define the rest of your life." But how do you forgive someone who stole your voice, your identity, your relationships? Claire had taken a year of my life and turned it into her weapon against me. Even worse, she'd shown no remorse. In jail, she'd given interviews claiming she was the real victim, that society was punishing her for fighting for love. Kevin and I had started talking again, carefully and with lots of therapy. Our relationship would never be what it was. Too much trust had been broken, but we were learning to be friends again. He'd taken a job in Seattle coincidentally, and we'd grabbed coffee a few times when he was in town for interviews. "I keep wondering what would have happened if I'd been more suspicious," he'd said during our last conversation. If I'd pushed harder to talk to you directly instead of accepting her explanations. She was very convincing, I'd admitted. She fooled our entire family. The real work was rebuilding my other relationships. Some friendships had survived Claire's manipulation, strengthened by the shared trauma of discovering we'd all been deceived. Others hadn't recovered. Too much hurt had been caused by her poisonous messages. My parents were struggling the most. Mama blamed herself for not seeing through Claire's lies, while Daddy swung between rage and heartbreak. They'd raised 2 daughters they thought they knew, only to discover one of them was capable of unimaginable cruelty. She needs help, Mama would say sometimes. Mental health treatment. She needs consequences, Daddy would respond. What she did was evil. They were both right, and that was the hardest part to accept. Claire was sick, but she was also responsible for her choices. Those 2 truths would have to coexist somehow. 1 year later, I stood in my new apartment in Seattle, looking out at the city I'd chosen to start over in. The legal proceedings were finally complete. Claire had been sentenced to 2 years in prison and 5 years of probation, plus restitution for the financial damages she'd caused. The psychological damages, of course, couldn't be calculated. Kevin and I had decided on an amicable annulment 6 months ago. Whatever we'd had before Claire's intervention was gone, irretrievably altered by betrayal and manipulation. But we'd found something else. A deep understanding and genuine friendship forged by shared trauma and mutual healing. He was dating someone now, a pediatric nurse named Angela who knew our whole story and wasn't intimidated by it. She deserves someone who can love her without ghosts, I'd told him when he nervously asked for my blessing. As for me, I was learning to trust again, slowly and carefully. My therapist said healing wasn't linear, and some days I still felt the rage and betrayal as fresh as that first moment I'd walked into my parents' living room and seen Claire in my wedding dress. But today felt different. Today felt like freedom. I'd started a nonprofit organization called Identity Theft Recovery, focusing specifically on cases of familial fraud, something that happened more often than people realized. Claire's case had exposed gaps in both legal protections and support systems for victims of family-perpetrated identity crimes. My phone rang as I was getting ready for work. Mama's name appeared on the screen, and for the first time in months, I didn't hesitate to answer. "Casey, baby, I have news," she said, her voice careful. "Claire's getting out early for good behavior. She'll be released next month." I felt the familiar tightness in my chest, but it passed quickly. "How do you feel about that?" "Scared. Hopeful. Confused." Mama sighed. "She says she wants to apologize to you to make amends." "And what did you tell her?" "That whether you speak to her or not is entirely up to you. That she lost the right to make demands when she chose to destroy her own sister." I smiled, proud of the strength Mama had found. "Thank you for that. Casey, are you happy?" "Really happy." I looked around my apartment at the life I'd built from the ashes of Claire's betrayal. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was mine. Completely and authentically mine. "Yes, Mama. I finally am." After I hung up, I thought about forgiveness one more time. I might never forgive Claire. That was my choice to make. But I had forgiven myself for being naive enough to trust her. And I'd forgiven Kevin for being human enough to be deceived. Most importantly, I'd learned that my identity was more than just my name, my relationships, or my plans. It was my resilience, my capacity for growth, and my refusal to let someone else's cruelty define my worth. Claire had tried to steal my life, but in the end she'd only stolen her own. While she spent the past year in prison, I'd spent it becoming stronger, wiser, and more authentically myself than I'd ever been. That was the best revenge of all. Living well, living truly, and living free. Confession time. Part of me thinks Casey is my hero, part of me wonders if she'll regret this someday. What's your gut telling you? Let me know in the comments. I read every single response. And if you want more stories about people who stop apologizing for having standards, subscribe and hit notifications.